I guess this sort of segues into one of the specific nutrient recommendations I was going to suggest.
Yeah.
And this is common in the American guidelines. This is common in the, the cardiovascular literature. It's in the World Health Organization. And that's to roughly try to consume less than 30% of your total energy from fat.
Okay.
And so who's that going to tick off? That's going to be a little bit triggering if you've ever trialed with keto or something that's a little more high fat. So the point of this is not to say, well, Tyler, you missed one of these points.
Yeah.
So you immediately are on your way to an unhealthy
That's it.
diet.
I'm going to die.
Right.
Oh, wait.
The point.
I am going to die. Eventually.
The point is there's 7, 8, 10, 15 other things, depending on which list you're looking at, that if you're eating 50% of your food from saturated fat, 50% of your total energy from fat, but you're eating 40 grams of fiber per day and you're eating 8 servings of vegetables instead of 5, like there are so many, there's so much leeway on either end of these spectrums. Like maybe you're getting your blood work done. Maybe you feel freaking great.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's not the point of this list, is for me to sit on my high horse and say, this is what you do. This is what I do. This is what Joey does.
Right.
This is what you should do. This is just a malleable place to start. Because then even looking at fat and saturated fat, we could have a whole episode on this. There are certain saturated fats that are more likely or less likely to cause issues.
Yeah.
So to lump all saturated fats in this bad category, again, just back to the whole sensationalized blanket statement kind of thing, doesn't do anybody any good.
And it seems like, especially going back to your first principle, individualized, it seems like to me, based on my own experience, there's certain things that work for certain people and don't work at all for other people.
How can you sustain what you're doing?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I know when it finally made sense to me was just comparing allergies. Like if one person can be allergic to cats and another person can be allergic to peanuts, and neither of those things inherently is bad or is actually should be hurting you, but your body's react in a very different way to them, why would it not be different with food as well?
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I think just, high carbs have just been so normalized in society. And I think that's partially why keto and Atkins have worked for people, at least short term, because how trained is it to say it's okay, you get a bagel in the morning or toast and that's all you eat.
Right.
And then you have a sandwich at lunch.
Right.
And I know for me, I can have different kind of sandwiches. Like we got like a fundraiser hoagie and it's literally a loaf of bread.
Yes.
Like if you looked at this objectively, like you just would eat a whole loaf of bread if you looked at it separately with like 2 slices of meat.
Yeah.
Or I'll get something like Dave's Killer Bread, which is made with all whole grains, higher protein, higher fiber to at least mitigate the carbs that are inherently in bread.
Sure.
You can get small slices and you have a sandwich that way. Like those are 2 totally different ways to have the same thing.
Yeah.
But I think for me and for a lot of people at the most basic level, look at your carb intake. I think for a lot of people, that's what's too high.
And when you say carbs, there's a difference. Mm-hmm. There's the fibrous carbs and non-fibrous carbs.
Definitely. Yes. So of course, the main things to look at are back to the potato chip thing. Well, I only eat like a handful here and there. But
right.
How many handfuls did you eat? And is the bag gone at the end of the week?
Right.
Those types of things. Do you eat a bagel every morning? Is it white bread based bagel? Or do you have something, again, not to go back to the same brand, but something like more of a multi-grain?
Yeah.
Those kind of things to really genuinely look at the carbs level itself. I know for me to lose weight, that's the first thing I can do is start cutting back on carbs. It is the most basic level. And then, like you said, the simple versus complex is huge. I don't think there's anything wrong with going keto or Atkins because I think it's okay to shock the system for a little bit, but is that sustainable? For you, it is.
Right.
And then there's the other angle of health. Yes, weight is number one. Definitely. I think that there's too much interplay with diabetes, long-term conditions, and heart issues. But if that means that you are constantly filling up with processed foods, and you never eat organic produce, it's got some heavy metals in it. You're eating the same type of things all the time. You're not varying. Right. You're not eating the rainbow. You're not getting different nutrients that way. So maybe again, you're not taking in proper amount of nutrients. You're getting some heavy metal exposure. The meats you're eating have hormones and antibiotics because you're always grabbing, meat from McDonald's or, the cheapest you can. And I know some people, you have to do what you have to do. Everybody's back to the individualized part, but there are processes and effects on the body that can come from those kind of things too. So there's so many different ways to look at it. But I do think that, looking at it individually, in terms of what you can do to sustain what you're doing in a healthy way, and just take the most basic things, up the amount of vegetables. If you're overweight and unhealthy, up the amount of vegetables, up the amount of fruits, whole grains, try to limit saturated fat, have some nuts, eat all the different types of foods. Red and processed meat's okay. Lower it. I mean, I think those are all basic things that, that people can agree on overall.
Okay. All right. You said less than 30% of your calories from fat. Mm-hmm. That was one of the specifics you were going to try and point out.
Yes.
What were some others?
Yeah. So in no specific amount, incorporate an array of nuts, legumes, whole grains, seafood, in which Joey already mentioned. And so it's funny, in the World Health Organization's list, it just says greater than 0 is the cut point for some of those items.
Okay.
And so it's as I think that's, I kind of like that.
Yeah.
Just start.
Nuts,
yes.
Legumes, that's beans and like sprouts, right? Mm-hmm. What else?
Yeah.
Seafood,
whole grains.
Okay.
And then I did lump seafood into there.
Okay.
Kind of separately away. That wasn't specifically World Health Organization. This was
sure.
Dante's Health Organization.
Got it.
Version. So
I like it. Okay.
And then aim for 5 servings of fruits and vegetables per day.
5. Okay.
So World Health Organization, they have it as 400 grams.
Okay.
For a lot of us, that means nothing.
Yeah.
So
I don't know what a gram is.
So either test out a scale to see what it looks like, or don't.
Yeah.
And just aim for 5 servings. Quickly Google what a serving of blueberries is, what it looks like. Start from there. Less than 10% of total energy from free sugars.
Okay. What's a free sugar?
Free sugar is considered literally adding sugar to something, like a tablespoon of sugar, a teaspoon of sugar to your coffee.
Sure.
Syrups, honey, technically, any other medium that's already present in a packaged food, sugary cereals.
Anything corn syrup.
Yes, stuff like that. And then even fruit and non-fruit juices or concentrates.
Oh, okay.
So go for the actual fruit versus the actual juices.
And that's because the actual fruit will contain other things,
fiber,
and have a bunch of fiber.
Comes back to the food matrix perspective. Yes, which is huge.
Okay.
And then speaking of fiber, try to consume greater than 25 grams of fiber per day, maybe 30, 35.
Okay.
And so what's 25 grams? Doesn't mean a whole lot to us, but I can assure you, if you're hitting 5 servings of fruits and vegetables per day, you're probably going to hit your fiber goal or be pretty close to it. So there's the ways of doing it are sort of built in.
Yeah.
If you start to hit 1 or 2,
yeah.
It lends itself to this scaffolding of this now nice looking diet that you've built. We talked about the fat perspective, the total fat.
Right.
Try to consume less than 10% of your total energy from saturated fats. And so, like I said, there's even a little bit of nuance there. And so a lot of processed meats, a lot of red meats, they tend to be higher in saturated fat. That's not like a jab against them. I eat plenty of red meat, but something to be mindful of.
Sure.
There's even certain sources of dairy that have higher percentages of saturated fats.
Of course.
That don't have as negative of consequences in terms of cholesterol and cardiovascular disease. And I only say that just to, again, provide a little bit of, color on how complicated that can be.
Yes.
10% is a good cut point. I know if you're not counting your calories, that's a little bit hard. But again, that if we regress to one of the earlier points, it's variation.
Right.
If you're eating steak 3 times a day, that's not variation.
Right.
Will you be okay? Maybe. That's maybe that's okay. But again, if we're just looking more globally, if you can replace one of those, processed meals of meat or meals with steak, if you can process or substitute that with chicken or eggs,
sure,
or fish or one of those, that again pushes you, moves the needle towards that goal, that theoretical goal that's out there of less than 10%.